Jose Aldo versus Pedro Munhoz. Now, what really happened in this fight? Jose Aldo's boxing has looked immaculate against Pedro Munhoz specifically. He has changed a little bit about his style and shown to be a lot quicker than some of his previous fights, especially the ones at 135. This is to give a lot of credit to his training over there with the Brazilian Navy, really getting his hands beat up there, and most importantly, picking up the usage of his jab. The jab in this fight was the main story and honestly the main difference with Jose Aldo compared to all of his previous fights. Aldo's jab combined with feints were used more in this fight than any other fight previously, and it's why Aldo broke his record for most strikes landed in a fight, and this was only 3 rounds compared to all the 5-round fights he had in 145. Yes, Aldo landed more significant strikes in this fight than any other fight in his entire career, and it's all credit to the heavy use of his jab in all different kind of scenarios. He used it in combinations, he used it as a feint to start up the right hand, he went to the body, went to the head, he would half feint into a left hook, which is extremely unorthodox. What happens here is that halfway look of a jab that this left hook has causes Pedro Munhoz to think that it's going to come down the center. So Pedro is going to instinctively narrow his guard a bit, and while Aldo is extending forward, he loops it around very quickly and able to get around the guard on Pedro. This is such a unique and effective technique. I would love to see Aldo use this a lot more in fights. Gives a completely different look than what he used to do, winging out left hooks from a distance, lunging into them. He would also find openings after a previous jab feint combo where he would feint up high, go for the right hand from a distance, but Pedro would backstep away with his hands up. This exposed the body. Aldo now knows to make an adjustment due to that reaction, so he starts chasing the body instead for the entire fight. Aldo will also use the jab to measure distance on Pedro's entry. From there, he's able to slip on the outside and land a tight uppercut as a counter shot. And the jab ultimately was disrupting a lot of what Pedro wanted to do. It was getting him a bit frustrated. From the triple jabs from Aldo, creating distance and backing Pedro up, to him just constantly flinging it in Pedro's face, so Pedro could not attack on that straight line. He had to move his head, get a bit more lateral, but ultimately from there, what do you know from Pedro? He throws big winging punches, left hooks, right overhands. You just cannot catch Aldo with those kind of strikes. Either that telegraph will allow Aldo to clinch up with him, or Aldo will be able to simply move away and pivot away from the punches. In some of those combos, Aldo would attack only with straight punches, starting everything with a jab as Pedro would station himself in place to defend the shots, block all of them because Pedro doesn't really use head movement. From there, Aldo was able to, in the middle of it, hop step to his right to create that better angle and catch Pedro with a powerful 1-2 afterward. This hop step is only shifting your position into a different angle. You keep the same stance, you hop with both feet into another angle, and from there you're also able to attack with the same punches. This hop step is something that Jose Aldo almost never did in his entire career. You see this a lot more from the karate-based fighters or the fighters of the more unorthodox Muay Thai style, such as a Darren Till or Mirbek Taisimov. Aldo's always been much more of a pivoting or L-stepping fighter rather than someone who bounces in different angles, keeping the same stance. Not only to attack with, Aldo was using his jab to jam Pedro's right hand back, forcing Pedro to have to attack with only his left hand. That jab jamming gives more openings for Aldo to read the situation and either get away from Pedro's left hand or counter it effectively. The jamming with the jab also tells you that Aldo was using it the entire fight. It was a constant use, where in the past, Aldo would use it in specific moments, either to check the opponent from a distance, or he would use it as an escape, as an exit, to reset into his stance. And then he would just allow the fight to commence in a very inactive manner. And other feints such as conditioning Pedro Munhoz with that right cross to the body to eventually fake it low, which sets up a natural low feint, and he comes up with a winging right uppercut, which he also landed on Max Holloway in both fights. The first and the second, he used the same technique against Max Holloway. It showed to be very useful in this fight with Pedro Munhoz, who's a completely different build, a completely different style to Holloway. And almost all of the stuff he tried in this fight, almost all the startups to every exchange, were coming off either a jab or a feint, and it's very uncharacteristic for Jose Aldo, who would in the past explode in moments, a lot of times leading with the left hook or leading with his right hand. In the past, Aldo usually got through his fights using his superior technical reflexes, backed up on amazing speed and sheer power many times. He would do enough from a distance to get by until exchanges are forced, where then he explodes to get the better of those exchanges. He would use the right counter over your entry jab or lunge in the naked left hook from a distance to start up his short explosive combination. This is one of the first times Aldo sat behind many jabs and feints to start everything he wanted to do. He kept a constant activity at all times, tallying up his record-breaking punch count in this 3-round fight. and this allowed him to flow into combinations without expending much energy, instead of what he used to do, spontaneously explode, which can be extremely taxing on the body. The jabs and the feints allow him to read the situations a lot better and eases him and keeps him more calm in the fight. All those heavy usage of jabs and feints are going to allow him to pace himself more efficiently, and that's very important here. Therefore, it gives him that quote-unquote better cardio for the fight. And this is going to continue for his fights later on in his 135-pound division. It's reason why he didn't look tired at all fighting Pedro Munhoz, even though he was getting backed up for most of the fight. Usually, Aldo starts gassing out in that third round, because one thing Aldo's jab did very nicely, that was many times absent in critical moments from his previous fights, was constantly control space. Aldo has many times been the reactor in the fight. Many times he was waiting on the opponent to show him something, so then he would be forced to explode and triumph in those exchanges due to his speed and reflexes and technical prowess with his power shots. This stemmed from his second Mendes fight, his Edgar fights, and especially his Max Holloway fights. It's very nice to see Aldo take charge, lead the dance, and get the opponent to have to react to him, to his jabs and feints specifically, which further creates more openings for himself to explode on. This is why you saw many different kind of setups. I mean, the double feint to a right hand, the feint up high to the right hand to the body, and it flowed a lot better than he used to. The feint jab into a left hook right low kick, where before he used to throw this combo, he would not set it up behind a jab or a feint. This time doing it, it allows him to flow into the combo, as well as get that natural reaction out of Pedro Munhoz that he's looking for. There were so many different setups for him that allowed him to flow into these combinations, and it got the reaction out of Pedro Munhoz to allow him to land these strikes a lot more meaningfully. But here's the thing, man, Aldo always had a great snappy jab. His jab was always very dynamic, but the usage was never as constant like it was against Pedro Munhoz. He would use it against Mendes, Lamas, Korean Zombie, etc., but there would be prolonged periods where Aldo would just be idle at a distance. He would just be so inactive, stationed in front of his opponent with no jabs, no feints, no constant footwork, nothing really there, and he would just wait on the opponent's action. This is why you remembered Aldo's fights being so inactive in the past. He did not do that here against Pedro, constantly creating obstacles for his opponent to get through, and while they're trying to go through these obstacles, the openings present themselves in different angles. And now, in a division where he's bigger and longer than most of the guys here, his benefits of keeping that approach of jabs and long feints are going to be huge for him against the smaller fighters who need a way to get in their range on Jose Aldo. And leg kicks are not going to do it, man. Pedro Munhoz is probably the other best leg kicker in this division, and almost every single leg kick was checked by Aldo. Aldo purposely kept that light lead leg always ready to check or pull away from the leg kicks. He defended almost every single leg kick from Pedro Munhoz, and Munhoz was throwing calf kicks. The terror, the plague in MMA right now, the thing that's destroying all these fighters, calf kicks. And Jose Aldo defended almost every single one of them. Not bad for someone who's supposedly over the hill. And not only that, Aldo was able to advance forward after the leg kicks, which is something that doesn't normally happen for fighters who are trying to defend calf kicks specifically. They try to back away after defending. It just showed the confidence that Aldo had against this technique. And at this point, we cannot undermine Jose Aldo anymore. A lot of the times when he loses, people are quick to throw that the guy's just out of it, he can't compete with any of the contenders. When in reality, Jose Aldo in the 135-pound division is rightfully a top 5 fighter. Is he the best? Will he become champion? I don't know. I don't think so. I think Petr Yan is just ahead of the pack right now. TJ Dillashaw is right behind him. But Jose Aldo is here to stay for a couple more years, man. At 34 years old, he's still showing great technique. He's actually improving in his boxing. And now with new bodies in the 135-pound division, guys who are smaller, shorter reach, different styles than the 145ers, Aldo can practice different kind of techniques and different strategies that he was not able to use against the bigger guys in the higher weight class. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.